She had always been a quiet girl, the type who preferred sitting near the back of the room and listening rather than speaking. Most people barely noticed her, and honestly, she didn't mind. The only place where she truly felt alive was when her fingers touched the keys of her old piano at home. It wasn't a fancy piano, just a second-hand upright with a few keys that sounded a little heavier than others. But to her, it was perfect. It was the one place where she didn't feel the need to explain herself. Every emotion she couldn't say out loud somehow came out through the notes she played. Her mother always encouraged her love for music, even though the family didn't have much. Whenever the girl played something soft and warm, her mother would smile and say, "You don't need words to speak. Your piano speaks for you." Those words stayed with her, especially during moments when she felt too shy to show her talent to anyone else. One day, her mother heard that a local music academy was accepting new students for their yearly program. It wasn't a big fancy academy, just a small building run by teachers who genuinely cared about music. What made it special was that the academy held a big performance every year where students could show their skills to a live audience. The girl had never performed in front of strangers before, but the moment she saw the academy's poster, something inside her whispered that maybe this was her chance to grow. After a week of thinking, she agreed to join. Her first day at the academy was both exciting and scary. The rooms were filled with the sounds of different instruments, violins warming up, drums being tested, and of course the soft clicking of piano keys. When she entered the practice hall, a group of students were already gathered, chatting and laughing loudly. She quietly found a seat in the corner and kept her eyes down, hoping no one would ask her to introduce herself, but people noticed her eventually. They noticed the way she held her hands, the careful and gentle way she treated the piano, and the way she listened with full attention when the teacher explained something. She wasn't trying to stand out, but sometimes even quiet people catch attention, simply by doing things with sincerity. Then came the boy who changed everything. He was the opposite of her in every way. Confident, loud, always smiling, and incredibly sure of himself. Everyone seemed to know him already. He walked into the room with the kind of energy that made people turn their heads. He played the piano with speed and force, using complicated techniques that impressed almost everyone. Teachers praised him. Students admired him. And he knew it. When he noticed the quiet girl sitting alone, he walked over, not out of kindness, but out of curiosity. He asked if she also played piano. The girl nodded softly, hoping the conversation would end quickly. But the teacher asked her to play something so the class could get to know her skill level. Her heart raced. She hadn't expected to play in front of others on the very first day. She slowly walked to the piano, sat down, and took a deep breath. Her hands shook a little. Instead of playing something complicated, she chose a simple melody she had practiced at home, soft, slow, and emotional. The hall grew quieter as she played. A few students leaned in, surprised at how peaceful her music felt. She wasn't fast or flashy, but there was a calmness in her notes that felt warm, like a gentle morning breeze. But as soon as she finished, the boy let out a short laugh. It wasn't a loud laugh, but it was enough. Enough to freeze her heart, enough to make her shoulders drop, enough to make the other students look away awkwardly. "That's it?" he said with a smirk. "It sounds like something from a beginner's lesson book." The room went silent. A few students exchanged uncomfortable looks. The girl's face warmed with embarrassment, and she lowered her gaze. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight, and her hands felt cold. The teacher quickly stepped in, telling the boy to be respectful and reminding everyone that music isn't only about difficulty, it's about feeling. But the damage was already done. The girl quietly returned to her seat, trying not to show how deeply the comment had affected her. Throughout the rest of the class, she barely looked up. She listened to others play, but her mind kept replaying the boy's laugh. It wasn't just the sound of it, it was the confidence behind it, the way he dismissed her entire effort without thinking twice. And the worst part was that she believed him. She started wondering if maybe she really was too simple, too quiet, too basic. She wondered if she even belonged there. When the class ended, students walked out in groups, talking excitedly about their pieces and the upcoming annual performance. The girl stayed behind for a moment, pretending to organize her bag, hoping the room would empty quickly so she wouldn't have to walk out with anyone watching her. As she picked up her sheet music, the teacher approached her with a gentle smile. "You play with heart," the teacher said quietly. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. Music isn't a competition. It's expression." The girl nodded, grateful but still hurt. Compliments felt nice, but pain always echoed longer. She walked home slowly, thinking about everything that happened. The sky was starting to turn orange, and the air felt cooler. She kicked small pebbles along the sidewalk, her mind full of doubts. When she reached home, her mother took one look at her and knew something was wrong. The girl didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her mother sat beside her and waited patiently. After a long silence, the girl finally whispered, Maybe I'm not good enough." Her mother didn't argue right away. She simply held her daughter's hand and said, "Talent isn't measured by one person's opinion. You have something special, and you know it. Don't let someone else's words decide your path." Those words made the girl breathe a little easier, even though the pain was still there. She went straight to her piano, sat down, and touched the keys as if asking them for guidance. She played the same melody she had played in class. This time, the notes felt different. They felt heavier, deeper, shaped by hurt but also by determination. She realized something important while playing. The boy might have laughed, but that didn't mean she should stop. She didn't join the academy to impress him or anyone else. She joined because piano made her feel alive. The next day at the academy felt awkward. Students were practicing in different corners, and she noticed a few of them glancing at her, probably remembering the moment from yesterday. She tried to ignore it and focused on warming up her hands. She chose a simple exercise, something she knew well, so she wouldn't get nervous again. As she played softly, something unexpected happened. A younger student sat near her and listened quietly. After a while, the child said, "Your music is nice. It makes me feel calm." The girl blinked in surprise. It was the first genuine compliment she had received from another student. She didn't know what to say, so she just smiled. And for the first time since yesterday, she felt a tiny spark of confidence returning. The rest of the week passed slowly. The boy continued being loud and confident, showing off difficult pieces like he always did. He didn't pay much attention to her anymore. Maybe he thought she wasn't worth noticing. Maybe he thought she would never be competition, but something inside the girl had changed. She was still quiet, still shy, but now there was a small fire burning inside her. A fire that whispered, "You can prove him wrong, not with words, not with anger, but with music." That small fire was the beginning of a journey neither she nor the boy knew was coming. A journey that would eventually lead to a moment no one in the academy would ever forget. After that first awkward day at the academy, she couldn't stop thinking about the piano and the boy's laugh. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his smirk, heard the sharp edge in his voice. At first, it made her want to give up, to avoid playing in front of anyone ever again. But deep down, she knew that wasn't who she was. Piano wasn't just something she did, it was a part of her. And no single person's opinion could take that away. The next morning, she woke up before anyone else. The sky was still dark, and the streets were quiet. She tiptoed to the piano and sat on the bench. The cold keys greeted her fingers like old friends. She started practicing the same melody she had played at the academy, the simple tune that had once been laughed at. But today, she didn't play it the same way. She played it with intention. She paid attention to each note, each pause, each gentle rise and fall. Her fingers moved with more confidence, her heart beating in rhythm with the music. For the first time, she realized that practice wasn't just about learning notes or playing fast. It was about understanding the music, feeling it, and letting it flow naturally. She started experimenting, trying small changes to the melody, softening a note here, stretching a pause there. Each change felt like discovering a new part of herself. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was trying to speak, through music. The things she couldn't say with words. At the academy, the days passed slowly but steadily. The boy continued to dominate attention. His hands flew over the keys with skill and speed, drawing admiration from teachers and students alike. Some students began to compare themselves to him, feeling either nervous or jealous. She felt the pressure too, but differently. Instead of trying to compete with his speed or showiness, she focused on her own growth. She practiced quietly during breaks, taking her time to refine every note, every chord, every emotion she wanted to express. One afternoon, while she was practicing in a small, empty room, her teacher walked in. The teacher had a kind face, always watching students with patience and encouragement. He sat quietly, listening for a moment, then spoke. "You have a gift," he said softly. "Not the kind people notice at first, but the kind that touches hearts. You should consider creating your own piece for the performance, something that comes from you, not just from the lessons." She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The idea of composing her own piece seemed impossible at first. She wasn't used to thinking beyond the notes in her book. But at the same time, something in her stirred. The thought of expressing herself fully, in her own way, made her fingers tingle with anticipation. For the next few days, she worked on creating her own music. She started by humming melodies quietly to herself while walking home, tapping rhythms on the table while eating breakfast, even whispering little ideas to the piano late at night. Slowly, these ideas turned into small sequences of notes, and the sequences began to take shape as a coherent piece. It wasn't easy. Many times she would play a part she liked and then immediately feel that it wasn't good enough. She would stop, sigh, and try again. Sometimes she would feel frustrated, questioning whether she had the talent to finish the piece at all. But every time she returned to the piano, she remembered her mother's words. Talent isn't measured by one person's opinion. You have something special. Don't let someone else's words decide your path. Her mother noticed her determination. Even though the girl often stayed late in her room, sometimes humming the melody in the dark, her mother never interrupted. She understood that this was more than practice. It was a journey, a discovery of self through music. "Keep going," her mother would whisper gently when she saw her practicing. "Your music is yours. That's what makes it special." At school, the academy began preparing for the annual performance. Posters went up, lists of performers were made, and students practiced harder than ever. The boy, confident as always, seemed to enjoy the attention. He joked with other students about how easy his piece would be for him to perform. Some students laughed along, feeling a mix of admiration and nervousness. The girl felt a pang of anxiety. Part of her worried that her piece, which was still incomplete, might not stand out. But another part of her knew that this performance wasn't about competing with him. It was about showing herself what she could do. During one of the practice sessions, a younger student came over and asked her to play her melody. She hesitated but agreed. As she played, she watched the younger student's eyes widen, and when she finished, the child whispered, "It's so beautiful. I've never heard anything like it." That small compliment lifted her spirits. She realized that music wasn't about being the fastest or the most complicated, it was about touching people. And even if only one person appreciated her music, that was enough to keep her going. She continued composing late into the nights. Each day, the piece grew. It started with a soft, slow beginning, then built into a part that expressed struggle and doubt, and finally resolved in a section that felt like hope and triumph. She poured herself into every note, every pause, every crescendo. And with each passing day, her confidence grew. She began to believe that maybe, just maybe, her music could reach others in a way that was unique and memorable. Meanwhile, the boy continued to notice her. He didn't laugh anymore, not in the open way he had the first day. Sometimes he glanced at her during class, and she noticed his curious look. But she didn't let it distract her. She knew he had his own path, just as she had hers. The academy announced that the performance schedule would be released soon. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her piece was nearly ready, but the thought of performing in front of everyone, including the boy who had laughed at her, made her stomach twist. She practiced more than ever, rehearsing not just the notes, but also her breathing, her posture, and the emotion behind each section. She wanted her music to tell a story, her story without a single word. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned orange, she sat by the window with the piano in front of her. She closed her eyes and played the piece from start to finish. The melody flowed effortlessly now, every note carrying her feelings. She felt tears prick at her eyes, not sadness, but a strange mixture of relief and pride. She had created something entirely her own. Something no one could take from her. The next day, the academy teacher noticed her practicing and nodded with approval. "You're ready," he said. "When you perform, remember one thing: play for yourself first. The rest will follow." Those words stayed with her as the days moved closer to the performance. She practiced even more diligently, refining her piece and ensuring that every note was exactly how she wanted it. The boy continued to perform complex pieces in class, but she no longer felt intimidated. She had found her own voice. By the time the performance was only a few days away, she could play her piece without mistakes, without hesitation. Her fingers glided over the keys and her heart felt steady. She knew that the real challenge wasn't the complexity of her music, but the courage to play it in front of an audience. She remembered the first day when the boy had laughed. She remembered the sting of embarrassment, the tightness in her chest, the doubt that had nearly made her give up. But now, that memory felt different. It wasn't a weight anymore. It was fuel. It reminded her why she had worked so hard, why she had stayed up late, why she had poured her heart into every note. As she walked home that evening, she held her music sheets tightly. The streetlights flickered above, casting long shadows on the pavement. She thought about the upcoming performance and felt a quiet excitement rising in her chest. This was her chance not to prove anyone wrong, not to compete, but to finally let the music speak for her. For the first time since joining the academy, she felt ready. Not because she was perfect, but because she had poured everything she was into something beautiful. She had turned doubt into determination, fear into focus, and her quiet heart into a melody that belonged entirely to her. And deep down, she knew that when the day of the performance came, no matter what happened, she would walk onto that stage with courage, and her music would tell a story that no one could forget. The days before the performance were full of nervous energy. The academy was alive with excitement but also tension. Students were rushing from room to room, practicing the same pieces over and over, trying to perfect every note, every pause. Some were visibly anxious, biting their nails or tapping their feet, while others tried to act calm and confident. The girl noticed all of it, but she focused on her own preparation. She knew that she couldn't control anyone else, and trying to compare herself to others would only make her more nervous. The boy had been practicing in the main hall every afternoon, drawing a small crowd of admirers who whispered and clapped quietly after he finished. His fingers moved so fast over the keys that it seemed impossible for anyone to keep up. Some students whispered about how perfect he was, how amazing his performance would be, and how the audience would be completely impressed. The girl overheard the whispers, and at first a little doubt crept into her mind. Could her simple piece really compete with something so flashy? Would anyone even notice the music she had poured her heart into? But then she remembered why she had created the piece in the first place. It wasn't about competition or winning anyone's approval. It was about expressing herself. It was about showing courage in the face of fear and refusing to let anyone else's judgment define her. With that thought, she returned to the piano and began practicing, not just with her hands but with her heart. Every day she played, she discovered something new about her music. Sometimes she found a note that didn't feel quite right, and she would pause, trying different ways to play it until it expressed exactly what she wanted. Sometimes she would play a section over and over, feeling frustrated, only to realize that the imperfection was what made it real. She learned that music wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest. Her teacher noticed her growing focus and dedication. One afternoon, after she finished practicing a particularly challenging section, he came over and said, "You're ready to share your music with the world. Don't let nerves stop you. Trust yourself." His words stayed with her, and she repeated them to herself quietly every day. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Despite the encouragement, the girl still felt nervous whenever she thought about performing in front of the boy. He had laughed at her once, and even though he hadn't done it again, the memory still stung. She wondered what he would think when he heard her original piece. Would he still dismiss her? Or would he finally understand what she had been trying to do all along? One afternoon, as she was practicing in a smaller room, she heard the boy walk past. His footsteps were loud, confident. Then she heard a few quick notes from his practice, a melody that was complex and fast. She paused and listened quietly. For a moment, she felt a pang of jealousy. His playing was impressive, and she knew that many people would be drawn to it. But then she reminded herself, her music was different. It wasn't about speed or complexity. It was about feeling. And she knew that the feeling in her piece was something he could never replicate. The next day, the academy held a practice session where students performed in front of a small audience of peers and teachers. The girl's hands trembled slightly as she walked to the piano, carrying her sheet music. She placed it carefully on the stand and took a deep breath. The room was quiet, and she felt all eyes on her. For a moment, fear rose in her chest, threatening to stop her. But then she remembered the late nights at home, the hours she had spent perfecting every note, the fire inside her that had kept her going since the first day. She began to play. At first, the notes were soft and tentative, but as she continued, she let the music flow freely. She closed her eyes and imagined the story she wanted to tell, the quiet moments of doubt, the small victories, the hope that refused to fade. With every note, she poured herself into the music. She forgot about the boy, the audience, even the applause. For those few minutes, there was only her and the piano. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then slowly the teacher clapped, followed by a few students. The applause wasn't loud or overwhelming, but it was genuine. She opened her eyes and saw a few peers looking at her with surprise and admiration. The boy, standing in the back, looked at her with a small, thoughtful expression. He didn't laugh. He didn't smirk. He just watched, almost as if he were trying to understand what he had just heard. The girl felt a small surge of confidence. She realized that sharing her music, even in this small way, was already a victory. She had faced her fear and expressed herself honestly. And for the first time, she began to believe that the performance could be something truly special. Over the next few days, the academy became a whirlwind of preparation. Students were rehearsing, teachers were organizing schedules, and the halls were filled with the sound of pianos, violins, and voices. The girl spent every spare moment at the piano, polishing her piece, practicing her breathing, and imagining herself on the big stage. She knew the performance wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that she had worked harder than ever before. One evening, she stayed late at the academy, the sun already set, and the building almost empty. She played her piece slowly, carefully, and then faster, letting the music rise and fall naturally. She imagined the audience in front of her, the lights, the quiet anticipation. She imagined herself performing with confidence and grace. With each practice, the music became more alive, more hers. Her teacher walked in quietly and listened from the doorway. When she finished, he said, "You've grown so much. You're ready. Remember, it's not about anyone else. Play from your heart, and everything else will follow." The girl nodded, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. She knew that the real test was coming. The performance would be the moment when everything she had worked for would be on display. She couldn't control how the audience would react, and she couldn't control the boy's reaction. All she could control was her music, her preparation, and her courage. That night at home, she practiced one last time before bed. Her mother watched quietly from the doorway, smiling softly. "I'm proud of you," she said. "No matter what happens, you've done something incredible." The girl smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She knew her mother was right. This journey had already taught her so much patience, perseverance, and the courage to face her fears. And even though she still felt nervous about performing in front of the boy, she also felt a quiet determination. She would play her music the way she felt it, without worrying about anyone else's opinion. The day of the performance was getting closer, and the excitement and tension in the academy were building. Students were practicing their pieces repeatedly, Teachers were giving last-minute advice, and everyone was talking about the big day. The girl felt the pressure too, but it was different now. She didn't feel small or intimidated. She felt ready. She had prepared, she had practiced, and she had created something that was uniquely hers. As she packed her bag for another practice session, she took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I can do this. I will do this." She felt the nervous flutter in her stomach, but it was accompanied by a spark of excitement. The stage was coming, and with it, the chance to finally share her music with the world. She knew that the journey wasn't over yet. There were still moments of doubt to face, nerves to conquer, and challenges to overcome. But she also knew that she had the strength to face them. She had worked too hard, and she had poured too much of herself into her music to turn back now. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she hoped that the boy who had laughed at her on the first day would finally see the depth of her talent. Not for revenge, not for proving him wrong, but simply for the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had stayed true to herself, and that her music had grown stronger because of her courage. The day of the performance arrived faster than she had imagined. The air outside the academy felt heavier, as if it knew something important was about to happen. She woke up earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. The quiet morning felt strange. Birds chirped, neighbors walked past, but her mind was already at the stage, imagining the lights, the audience, the piano, and the moment when all her hard work would be tested. She dressed carefully, wearing simple clothes that made her feel comfortable but also confident. She didn't need fancy outfits to feel ready. Her confidence came from the music she had created and the hours she had poured into it. As she walked to the academy, she clutched her sheet music tightly, taking slow breaths to calm the nervous energy in her chest. The academy was buzzing with activity. Students rushed around, tuning their instruments, practicing final notes, adjusting their seating positions. The boy was already there, sitting at a piano in the main hall, playing a quick melody with effortless skill. A small crowd had gathered, watching him, whispering, and occasionally clapping quietly. He looked confident, relaxed, and completely unaware of the storm of emotions building inside her. She walked past him, keeping her gaze down, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest. She knew that seeing him now could make her nervous, but she also reminded herself, this wasn't about him. This was about her. This was about showing the world the music she had worked so hard to create. The teachers called everyone into the main hall, where chairs had been arranged for an audience of parents, relatives, and local guests. The hall was large, and the bright lights made everything feel more intense. She noticed her fellow students adjusting their posture, taking deep breaths, and whispering to each other. Some looked confident. Others, like her, had a quiet tension about them. The schedule was announced. The boy would perform first, his flashy and complex piece going before hers. Her stomach sank for a moment, but she quickly reminded herself that it didn't matter. His performance could not take away the music she had created. Finally, the boy walked to the piano. The audience quieted immediately. He smiled, confident and assured, and began to play. His fingers moved with incredible speed and precision. The notes flew across the hall, filling the space with energy and excitement. Some in the audience whispered about how impressive it was. Some clapped quietly in appreciation. She watched him from the side of the stage, her hands clasped tightly. For a moment she felt nervous. His performance was powerful, flashy, and full of technical skill. But then she reminded herself of what made her music special. It was not about speed or technique. It was about emotion. It was about honesty. It was about her story. As soon as the boy finished, the applause filled the hall. He smiled, nodded, and walked off the stage, clearly proud of himself. Some students whispered about how difficult it would be to follow him, how the audience's attention might be hard to capture after such a performance. She felt a moment of doubt, but she pushed it aside. The music she had created was ready. She was ready. When her name was announced, she took a deep breath and walked to the piano. Every step felt heavy with anticipation. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She took her seat, placed her sheet music on the stand, and rested her fingers on the keys. The lights were bright, the audience was silent, and for a brief moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took another deep breath. She closed her eyes and remembered the countless hours she had spent practicing. The late nights at home, the support of her mother, and the encouragement of her teacher. She remembered the fire inside her that had started on her first day at the academy, and had grown stronger with every challenge she began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, almost shy. But as she continued, her confidence grew. She played not just with her fingers, but with her heart. Each note carried emotion, each pause spoke of quiet struggles, and every rise and fall of the melody told her story. The music was gentle yet powerful, simple yet profound. She imagined the audience listening, not just hearing the notes, but feeling the story behind them. She imagined the boy who had laughed on her first day, imagining what he would feel when he realized that this music, this simple yet powerful melody, had come entirely from her heart. The hall became quiet in a way that made her feel suspended in time. She didn't notice anyone else, didn't hear a single cough or whisper. There was only her and the piano, and the story she was telling through each note. The music moved from soft, hesitant beginnings to sections filled with tension, expressing fear, doubt, and struggle. Then it shifted again, rising into a part filled with hope, triumph, and the quiet satisfaction of overcoming obstacles. Her fingers moved with grace and confidence now, every note flowing naturally, guided by emotion. She felt the music inside her body as if it had become a part of her breath, her heartbeat, and her very soul. The more she played, the more alive the music felt. She could feel the audience leaning forward, absorbed in every note. When she reached the final notes, she played them slowly, letting each one linger, letting the silence between the sounds speak just as loudly as the melody itself. She held the last note, let it fade, and then lifted her hands from the keys. For a brief moment, there was silence. A deep, heavy silence that filled the hall and seemed to hold everyone's attention. Then slowly the audience began to clap. At first it was quiet, hesitant, as if they were waking from a spell. But then the clapping grew louder and louder, filling the hall with cheers and applause. Some teachers stood, clapping proudly. Parents cheered. Even strangers in the audience wiped away tears from the emotion in the music. The girl sat at the piano for a moment, breathing heavily, overwhelmed by the response. She felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear or anxiety, but from relief and joy. She had done it. She had shared her music, and it had touched people. She had spoken without words, told her story through notes, and the audience had understood. She looked to the side and saw the boy who had laughed at her. He was standing still, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. He had been expecting something ordinary, something simple to dismiss, but he had just witnessed something extraordinary. Her music had silenced the hall, captured every ear, and touched every heart. His expression held surprise, awe, and maybe even a little respect. She didn't feel triumphant because of him. She felt triumphant because she had trusted herself, faced her fears, and created something meaningful. The applause washed over her, and for the first time, she truly believed in her own talent. As the audience continued to cheer, she rose from the piano, bowed slightly, and smiled. The warmth of the applause filled her heart. She realized that this moment wasn't just about one performance. It was about every small choice she had made, every late night of practice, every note she had carefully played and corrected, every time she had decided not to give up. The boy walked past her quietly after his next performance. No words exchanged, but she caught a brief glance from him, a look that seemed to say he had finally understood. He didn't need to laugh. He didn't need to comment. The music had spoken for her, and that was enough. After the performance ended, students and audience members gathered around her, praising her piece, asking questions about how she composed it, and expressing how deeply it had affected them. The girl smiled, feeling a quiet pride and happiness. She realized that courage, honesty, and persistence had carried her to this moment, and she had nothing to fear from anyone's judgment ever again. That night, walking home under the glowing streetlights, she held her sheet music close and felt a calmness she had never known before. The stage, the lights, the applause, it was all magical, yes, but the true magic was inside her. It was the strength she had discovered, the music she had created, and the confidence she had earned. For the first time, she understood something important. Talent alone is not enough. Courage, heart, and the willingness to express yourself fully are what make music truly unforgettable. And in that moment, she knew that no matter where life took her, she would never stop playing, never stop creating, and never stop trusting the music inside her. The night after the performance, the girl could hardly sleep. Her mind kept replaying every note she had played, every pause, every rise and fall of her melody. She remembered the way the hall had fallen silent as the music flowed, the way people's eyes had widened in surprise, and the way even the boy who had once laughed at her had stopped in awe. She hugged her sheet music to her chest and felt a quiet warmth inside her, a mixture of pride, relief, and wonder. The next morning, she went back to the academy with a sense of calm she had never felt before. The atmosphere in the building was lighter than usual. Students were chatting about their performances, sharing stories, and congratulating each other. For the first time, the girl felt a real sense of belonging. She realized that the academy was not just about skill or competition. It was about growth, expression, and the shared love of music. Her teacher approached her, a proud smile on his face. "You did something extraordinary yesterday," he said. "Not because your piece was perfect, but because it came from your heart." That's what everyone felt. That's what made it unforgettable. The girl smiled, feeling her chest swell with pride. It wasn't just the applause or the recognition that made her happy. It was knowing that she had stayed true to herself, that she had faced her fear, and that she had expressed her story honestly. As she walked through the practice rooms, she noticed the boy sitting quietly at one of the pianos. He wasn't playing or showing off, just listening to the soft notes of another student. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should approach him, but curiosity and courage got the better of her. She walked closer and saw him looking thoughtful, almost serious. "Your piece yesterday. It was different," he said quietly, without the usual smirk. "I didn't expect it to... it was really something." The girl blinked, surprised. She didn't expect an apology or acknowledgement from him, but his words felt genuine, free from arrogance or ridicule. She nodded, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I just wanted to play what I felt." He looked at her for a moment and then smiled faintly. "I think I understand now. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just you. That's what made it powerful." That small conversation was enough to remind her that the journey wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about finding her own voice, trusting herself, and sharing it without fear. The boy had laughed at her first day, yes, but he had also been part of her growth, though unknowingly. He had been the spark that made her push harder, practice longer, and create something entirely her own. The days following the performance were filled with quiet celebrations. Students praised each other, teachers gave feedback, and parents expressed their pride. She was approached by a few students who admitted that they had doubted her at first, just like the boy, but her music had left them speechless. They wanted to know how she had created something so moving, and she explained with a shy smile that she had simply followed her heart and practiced tirelessly. She realized that the power of music wasn't in being flashy or fast. It was in honesty, emotion, and the courage to express oneself. Her experience had taught her that talent could be nurtured, that effort mattered, and that believing in oneself was just as important as skill. Her mother called her that evening, her voice full of pride. "I knew you could do it," she said. "But hearing about how everyone reacted, it makes me so happy. You've shown everyone the strength inside you." The girl smiled, feeling tears welling up. It wasn't just her mother's words, but the realization that her journey had changed her. She was no longer the quiet, shy girl who doubted her abilities. She was someone who had faced fear, worked hard, and shared her heart through music. At school, the boy began to treat her differently, not with mockery, but with respect. He would sometimes nod when she entered a room, occasionally asking about her music or listening quietly as she practiced. She noticed, too, that other students, who had once laughed or doubted her now showed encouragement. offering compliments and expressing genuine interest in her progress. Despite the newfound recognition, she remained humble. She knew that her journey was far from over. There would be more performances, more challenges, and more moments of doubt. But now she had a new understanding. She could face them all because she had discovered her own strength. One afternoon, while practicing alone in the academy, she paused and listened to the notes echoing in the room. Each sound reminded her of the journey she had traveled, the long nights of practice, the moments of frustration, the encouragement from her mother and teacher, and the courage it took to step onto the stage. She realized that the music itself had changed her. It had taught her patience, resilience, and the importance of self-expression. She thought about the boy again. It wasn't about him laughing or approving anymore. It was about how she had grown because of the challenge he had unknowingly given her. She smiled quietly to herself, feeling a sense of closure. Music had been her teacher in ways no one else could be. Her teacher noticed her reflection and came over. "You've grown so much, not just as a musician, but as a person," he said. "You've learned to face fear, to trust yourself, and to express your heart. That's the most important lesson of all." She nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle in her heart. She knew that the applause, the recognition, and the praise were wonderful, but the true reward was something deeper. It was the knowledge that she could create something beautiful from her own effort and emotion, and that it could touch people in ways she had never imagined. In the following weeks, the academy continued to flourish. Students were inspired by each other, sharing their music and encouraging growth. The girl continued to practice diligently, exploring new melodies and experimenting with different styles. She found joy in discovery, in expressing herself, and in knowing that her music could reach others. The boy, too, began to show a new side of himself. He became more thoughtful, less focused on showing off, and more willing to listen. Though they didn't always speak, there was a quiet understanding between them now, a mutual respect that had grown from the experiences they had shared. One evening, as the girl walked home from the academy, she looked up at the sky. The stars were bright and steady, and the cool night air brushed against her face. She held her sheet music close and felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had led her to a place of confidence, joy, and self-discovery. She realized that life, like music, was full of moments of doubt, challenge, and struggle, but it was also full of opportunities for growth, expression, and triumph. The courage to face fear, the patience to practice, and the honesty to express oneself were the true measures of success. As she reached her home, she placed her sheet music on the piano and sat down. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and she began to play, not for an audience, not for recognition, but simply for herself. The notes filled the room, soft and warm, carrying the story of her journey, her emotions, and her newfound strength. She played until the stars outside the window shone brightly, and she felt the music flow through her, connecting every part of her heart. And in that moment, she understood something profound. The journey was never really about anyone else's approval. It was about discovering her own voice, trusting herself, and finding the courage to share it with the world. From that day forward, she continued to play, to create, and to express herself through music. She faced challenges with confidence, embraced opportunities with courage, and lived each day knowing that her voice, her talent, and her heart were enough. Her journey had begun with doubt, laughter, and fear, but it had ended with courage, joy, and self-discovery. She had learned that music, when played with honesty and emotion, could transcend fear, touch hearts, and leave a lasting impact. And most importantly, she had discovered the power of believing in herself, the courage to face the unknown, and the joy of creating something truly her own. And so, she continued her journey, one note at a time, carrying the lessons of her performance and the music of her heart into every day that followed.